It is my pleasure to introduce to you folks Celeste Palmer. Celeste is the founder and the president of the nonprofit organization Bridging the Gap, which is an organization that helps people recover from and deal with traumatic brain injuries. In addition to that, she works with people who are caregivers in these situations and has looked really intentionally about um, the role of art in the process of our healing. And I think you can tell us most even more about it. But Celeste, first, I'm so grateful that you're spending your time with us today. And um, and you started this organization because of your own personal experience. Do you feel comfortable talking uh, about that? Wonderful. I'd love to kind of hear your story and your path, not just in terms of creating the organization, but also your personal experience with this trauma and recovery.
Okay. Well, it's good to be here with all of you. Um, my experience was that I woke up in what I found out was a hospital bed and did not know what I was or where I was. And so had a lot of people around me had a lot of splaining to do. Um, it was uh, so my memories of that time are more like just flash pictures, like you might look in a scrapbook and see a picture rather than a video. So because I'd be alert and aware and then I wouldn't be. And so when I was aware, it was people, what I can say now, were in lab coats and had stethoscopes. And if I were to describe it in the vocabulary I have now, it was like, well, that was the fashion and the stethoscope was jewelry and everybody dressed the same. So
So your whole context had been erased.
yeah, I had antegrade and retrograde amnesia is what they called it. So I really had no connection to anyone or anything, a career, a home, family, nothing. So people, so this is what I found out later had happened. They found a phone number and they called it. And the gal who answered the phone said, I don't know a Les Palmer. And her 9-year-old heard her mother say that and said, don't you think they mean Celeste? And she asked that of the 911 dispatch that was calling, and they said, well, we don't know. She said, well, okay, where's the accident? Should I go to the hospital? Should I go to the scene of the accident and try and identify her? And so she was the first one to meet up with me and say, I know this person, due to the amazing 9-year-old daughter, little Victoria. So so there were a lot of little stories like that were, put together to get me among friends. And they stayed with me the whole time that I was at the hospital for a few days, because they could repair the injuries, but brain injury, they didn't identify. They still have a difficult time in many locations identifying what went wrong with the brain and what I was aware of and what I wasn't. One significant thing they didn't catch was that my left side had no feeling. And since I had no memory, I didn't know what pain was or wasn't. Didn't know what I was feeling or not feeling. I had nothing to go on. Yeah. So it took getting dispatched home to a place I didn't recognize. Well, actually, back up a little bit. They did bring, my youngest was still living with me. He was 13. They brought him to the hospital and I didn't know him because my friend, Victoria's mom, came to the hospital and she brought one of her sons, or one or two of her sons, and my son, and I didn't know which one to pick. So thankfully my son came up and sat by the bed. And so I thought, this one must be the one. So yeah, it was for me, it wasn't, there was no emotion because I wasn't connected to anything. So there was
Yeah.
no sentimentality, none of that stuff. It was just being a sponge, taking it all in, trying to figure out how do you fit in and everything.
And,
So
and
yeah,
did you have language?
not much because I didn't have anything to respond to this. When they asked me questions, the neuro eval at that time is, do you know your name? Do you know where you are? That kind of question. And
Yeah.
no, I got nothing to go on here, folks. So, so in order to get me out of the Huskow, as my friend felt that I was in brain jail because I had no memories to go on, and she didn't want me there. She wanted to get me home and get me in a surroundings I would recognize and maybe give it, because the coincidence was that this friend of mine was studying nursing. So was raising her family. They were pretty well. The 9-year-old was the youngest, and she was going back to wanting to become a nurse and provide a second income that way to the family. So here she was understanding some of what was going on with me and realizing that I was going to be better off if I was back home, because at this time, the hospitals want you out of the bed, getting somebody else to take that bed. All this was going on.
And
And
how many years ago was this?
this was 2000.
In the year 2000. Oof.
So, and things, I mean, they do better with concussion protocols and other things like that. But at the time, it was kind of like, well, we're looking all over and this is all we can do. And we've done the CT scan, the MRI, and, nothing's really showing up. Well, it doesn't, because what they need to be testing for were, what I found out later from my neurosurgeon was, what was I able to do, my brain activity, and what was it producing? Like, could I add, could I subtract, could I do the things that I was going to need to do at home more in daily life? Was I going to be able to know that you get up in the morning and you prepare yourself, you go to the bathroom, you do a shower, you do these things, you go to the kitchen, what do you do in the kitchen, those kind of things. That's what I train people today to do in order to get back on track. That's what I was learning, because fast forward a little bit, I was in touch with some folks over here at Claremont Graduate School, and they encouraged me to all the research I was doing, because my neurosurgeon was telling me that really they hadn't studied the brain well enough to help me, because all parts of my brain were injured. My brain stem was injured. By the time I got to him and he found out that I had no feeling on my left side, the entire side, so I could bleed out from a paper cut.
Yes.
These were all things that, like, okay, but what does that mean? And he said, you have to scan your body, because we don't know what messages are getting to your brain. And the normal messages to the brain would be like this. And so it was back to, you think of before the accident, my body was on autopilot. Now I was on the manual transmission.
Right.
Everything had to be thought out. They said, we don't know how come you can walk, but we're assuming. So I got with a really great physical therapist, and she decided that probably there was a lot of muscle memory combined with my right side saying, let me lead the way. And then later on, we found out that I was ambidextrous before the accident. So both sides, at one point, I was with a trainer and he said, oh my gosh, you're standing on one leg so long, I think you're rooted to the spot. You can't even do this normally. So we're going to take a moment and find out what's going on in your brain. What was going on in my brain was that actually my left side now wanted to take part in catch the ball while you stand on one leg. So my left hand was saying, well, why can't we join in this game? And my brain was saying, no, you can only do it with your right hand. My left hand is saying, yes, I can do it. So my left side is starting to take part in things. So, it's amazing what the body wants to do and in the healing process. But to this day, 3 months ago, I was standing in line to check out, and I turned to say hello to somebody because I thought they tapped me on the shoulder. And she said, oh, I'm so sorry. My grocery cart hit you in the ankle. So my wiring is off. It works, but it's off. So I saw my neurosurgeon and I told him this little story, and he goes, isn't that interesting?
But it seems like you're approaching all of this with with curiosity.
I have to. I have this machine that I don't know anything about how it grew up. I don't know anything about how it went through toddler or went through any other phases. But
Yeah.
I got it, and I've got to make the best of it. And at the time I had a 13-year-old kid still at home, and I didn't know what that meant. And I found out that I found out what mail coming into the house was, and it wasn't all get well cards. It was bills. How was I going to deal with bills? There were just all these amazing things of being an adult person, and people look at me and assume I knew stuff, and I just sit there and go, my daughter came to visit from Texas, and we sat with my mom and my sister, just the four of us. And when we left the restaurant, she let me get ahead a little bit, and she said, "Do you realize that Mom has not said a word the whole time?" "Oh yeah, she remembered this and she talked about that." She said, "No, you guys haven't even noticed. She hasn't contributed one sentence." She's nodded, she smiled, but she hasn't contributed anything because she doesn't remember anything you all have talked about. So that says two things to me. One, people see what they want to see in somebody they recognize.
Hmm.
Two, people can be very narcissistic, egotistical. It's all about them. So I had a lot of very interesting experiences. I continue to have very interesting experiences. And there are times when I've had people say to me, "Well, because you treat this with humor as well, and it's pretty darn serious what happened to you, Celeste. They had to cut you out of that car with the jaws of life." I said, "That's what they tell me." And so people are telling me, "This is serious what happened to you. You don't have a history. You don't have connection with these people." And they go on like this, and they say, "And then you talk about it with such, you're amazed as if you're a science project in your own body." And I go, "Yeah."
That's what is blowing my mind, is that your mindset towards this. You said I have to, when I said you're approaching this with curiosity, but another way is just to kind of retreat from it. But you're making the choice to open up and embrace where you are. It's not that this to me is this isn't kind of sort of passively the only way you could have gone.
Yeah, exactly. Because I had this wonderful trainer that we would go, not in the training room. We went outside. I was barefoot. I walked through the long grass before the lawnmowers got to it, right? And underneath the grass was uneven earth. So my feet felt the uneven earth. And I haven't given it up. I still do that. Then I found the Botanic Garden was a wonderful place to go. And it happens to be California native plants only, except what the birds drop in. And we try and catch those plants and remove them so nobody thinks that those other plants belong here. But the birds bring the contributions. So I became a volunteer there to learn more about what's here and why. And I'm not going to visit all these little nooks and crannies of California. I traveled the country wide after the accident for several years, trying to dig out. My neurosurgeon, I know I'm skipping around, by the way.
No, that's okay. This is, but we have there's time is broken up. We've got this wonderful flow of ideas here. This is amazing.
Because at the Botanic Garden, I found these lovely, and now I'm going to butcher the name. It's a poppy, and it's the size of your whole hand, and it's a wait a minute, I've got the name.
And they're this tall.
They are, and they're gorgeous. And so I started drawing and painting them, and I just enjoy being among them. And there's a bench, and it happened to have my friend's name on it, and I said, "Oh, I can sit here, and I can listen to his voice in my head." And her voice, because they speak with German accents, even to the day they died. They had kept it. Mattia, yes, that's it. Thank you. Well, it's not Matilda, it's Mattia. And that D should be another L. But it is fantastically beautiful poppies. And the wind in the different trees in the different sections of the garden. And I could just let that pass over me. And my the receptionist and the workers in the doctor's office said when I first went back to them, my shoulders were up to my ears. And they still remember this when I go visit them. And they say, we knew you were there for us to help you get your shoulders back down where they belong. So one of the things the Botanic Garden did for me was to give me that sense of remembering what they told me to do, to get that sense. So nature. And then I would draw the stick birds, or when I was in a lecture at the university, because I went back to university to get another graduate degree so that I could know something on my resume in the education section. Why not?
So you'd previously you'd done some whole other graduate program. You throw yourself, you're not just sort of rebuilding yourself and every memory of like, what is this weird thing that comes into my door? You are then putting yourself back into graduate school to, and you chose education.
I chose, let's see, the first thing I did was a certificate in leadership in the management school, business school. And then by the time I finish my degree, they said, oh, and we're going to put you into, oh goodness, it's Beta Gamma Sigma. And that's the highest award you can get in a business school. It's kind of like making magna cum laude, whatever that thing is. I'll transpose words too.
Quite all right.
And usually I always tell people, I'm going to give a little talk, but it'll be fill in the blank. You may have to help me with some words. It'll be okay. So this is an interactive conversation, but I really do. I thoroughly enjoy, because a lot of times you saw the flowers and they're all around me, but I also do faces. And friends, when they look at my sketchbook, say, well, who is that? And I say, I don't know. They just appear. Because I think that I watch the people that walk through the garden too. And I don't necessarily know, or on Zoom. Oh my gosh, have we seen enough faces on Zoom? I mean, there's other times where, oh, I love these. I don't know where I saw them first, but I love these pod things. And when I do a wash on the back of these pages, and then I go to the garden and I find these trees or these pod things and leaves, and I let the wash come through the as if everything is just a veined thing, like it was sycamore leaves one time, and I feel them that have fallen off and are blowing around the ground, and the texture of these things is just amazing to me. So yeah, I think that is what, to me, has helped in the recovery of activating, or as they say when they do these tests, it lights up those parts of the brain. Yeah.
Now, before the accident, had you also been doing art?
Not to this degree, not to the degree that these things appear. And
you dabbled a little bit, but this wasn't like a fundamental part of what you do.
No. I wouldn't say that. I would say that I would sit and I would draw, and it would be more stick figure than it is today. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the other thing was, these lectures, they were talking fast, and my words, and it would take me so long to say, okay, A, B, C, okay, that's, and spell out words for note taking in college. Oh my gosh. So I just drew a picture, and it would remind me of what the words were in that lecture.
So you had to take sketch notes and invent the whole system for yourself.
I invented my own language on paper.
You invented your own symbolic language and graduated with highest honors.
So when parents started calling me after I started this 501c3, I had parents calling me and saying, he's gotten through, squeaked through, we've gotten him through, he's not going to go to college. He says, I don't fit in. And we got him to go to Mount Sac Community College over here. And with a lot of help and everything, got him out, got him going and everything. He realized he could. I saw him a couple of years, well, this is before COVID, and he had graduated, started his own business after a serious TBI. And this is just one of many stories. I'm not going to go into too many of them, but oh my gosh, you guys, it is the most rewarding thing to see that all you have to do is show them there is a door, they're not alone.
Yeah.
That our brains do work, but in different ways. And if you were told, but by so many mistakenly trying to be helpful people that, oh, well, you're stable, go home and watch soap operas. No, because if you can find that, and we do have on our website, you can see we have an art studio. And we have an artist who's in Colorado, and she's got such an interesting background. She draws completely different than I do, but we find we find so much helpfulness. And you can see on there, there's a whole bunch of free art to use and to just doodle yourself into happiness.
Just do yourself into happiness, did you say?
Draw yourself into happiness.
Draw yourself.
Doodle, draw, whatever it works. And yes, it is. And we start all of our support groups online. We start by people sharing the most recent act, random act of kindness they've witnessed or been part of. I'm sorry.
This is so. This is this what you're mapping out here. I feel like as we kind of go along in our lives, we add complexity and we add complexity and add complexity. You had everything stripped away from you and had to make deliberate choices about what to leave in, what to actively kind of go out and make happen, and are then kind of crystallizing essentials out of that. And you chose kindness, you chose community, you chose art, you chose nature, you chose being of service to other people. As of all the things that you could kind of, and you chose curiosity, and wonder, and chose to embrace learning. And these are, but that suite of choices, then of course, it defines who you are. And I think that sometimes people who haven't had been forced to be deliberate about those things, perhaps we're prioritizing other things that are not as meaningful in the end, to a rich and present life.
Well, that's why before COVID shut down my speaking to groups, I was everywhere that anybody asked me to go, whether they were in the health field or whether they were in churches or whether they were in aging groups, because those people that want to limit themselves or feel already isolated, and then of course the pandemic isolated us like crazy. So we started doing Zoom right away because we'd been doing Skype back in the day because some of our folks ended up back in hospital, or some folks were introduced to us and they hadn't been out of hospital yet. And so we did Skype. And so it wasn't a big jump for us to do Zoom and become international for our support groups, and have the neurologists start referring people to us because they started realizing it was mental health that was important. But some of the things that you just reminded me of was that one thing was, since I was empty, I got to start over. I looked around at people and just observed and said, oh, those are the people. I watched people and the people that they like to be around. And I said, those are the traits I'm going to put inside here. If that's what draws people to people, those are the good qualities.
And for you, what really then stood out? What were some of these deliberate choices that you were making? That's when I'm going to follow. That's when I'm going to follow. And were there any that you deliberately chose not to follow?
Those people that do unkind things that are negative based, and it's not necessary. those are not to be followed. It's not necessary to cause people to not want to be together, to be an irritant in the group. No. So those people that were doing things just because they wanted to, not for money, not for any other reason than this is a nice thing to share with others. Those people that wanted to share their knowledge because they had the knowledge and others didn't. Because they had a skill and others didn't. And it was amazing to be around people that were just wanting to be good citizens of the world. And to watch what that meant and what it was for them to just be good. It's kind of where the random acts of kindness goes, you know? I mean, if you just open a door for somebody and they go, wow, thank you. What? Because nobody's done that for a while. Or because their hands were full and they really were trying to figure out how am I going to get that done?
Uh-oh. And you're talking about sort of being a good citizen of the world, and we've sort of heard some other a number of things that are a part of that. But if I were just to say, like, what kind of floats to your mind as sort of the top of the list of these things that you really want to deliberately cultivate as a good citizen of the world?
If I'm to be recorded as being any one thing, I want to be a good listener. Please think of me as a good listener.
Tell me a little bit more about that. What does it to you mean to be a good listener?
When I join a group, when I enter a room, I will be the last one to speak if I need to speak. Because if everybody's already talked about the topic we're there to talk about, there's nothing to add. I don't need to be heard because Celeste talked. No, Celeste may have had something to say, or she didn't. I'll be an observer. I'll be a good observer. I will watch and I will listen. And those are the two most important things I think a human being can be. A good listener and a good observer. And you are those, Jack.
Oh, thank you. It takes. I think I have a tendency to. I'm not the last person to speak in a room. I'm like,
well, you bring something to the kind of things I've seen you at. You're the one that brings the thing to be educated about. So you do bring the dynamic, okay? And that's the important thing for you, because that's why you're there. So when it comes to, you speak because there's something to say. And I think when we take time to have that thought, that pause, in my support groups, for instance, there will be time where there's what's called dead air for a reason. It's for our brains to catch up to what's been going on.
And you're comfortable just with that.
And I teach people to be comfortable with the silence. That's best in nature too. And you can do that at the doctor's office where you're nervous. You can do that anywhere. And so I teach a 4-square breathing that I'm finding many people all over Instagram and everywhere are adding to it to do it a little bit differently. But it's so simple, because all you do is you breathe out to the count of 4, you hold to the count of 4, you breathe in to the count of 4, you hold to the count of 4, and so on. And if you see that in kind of a block, it's very simple. You don't need to go look at something up on your phone to breathe and be mindful. Yeah. You just take it in and you just do it wherever you are, in a place, in traffic, wherever you are. So it can be at those times, or it can be just when you're sitting on a cushion on your balcony or on your patio, or, you know, at times when you notice that your hands are clammy. But it's the best. It is. Oh, I wanted to say too, that when we were talking about traits and all this kind of stuff, is that one of the things I told people was that I'm collecting all the copies as I traveled across the country, coming across support groups, coming across these hospitals and everything that were treating brain trauma, from strokes to concussion to everything I could find. I said, I think I'm like Alice in Wonderland. I went down the rabbit hole, or the looking glass, or whatever. And so I collected a whole bunch of them. My daughter-in-law has them now, but it was, I felt like I was Alice in Wonderland. Oh my goodness, look at this. Oh, I'm so curious about that.
It is, but that curiosity gives you permission to be open to the world,
And to be hurt by the world.
and to be hurt. So then, and it's a vulnerability.
My neurosurgeon, the first one, said to me, I'm going to talk to you as your dad probably did when you were 12, and warn you that you can be very, very hurt by individuals, by organizations, by things in the world.
And
so you have to be cautious. Yeah. You have to have little red flags about things. You have to know about that. And it is, I mean, it is that kind of world. You know, we hear about it in the news, we hear about it from other people, you hear about it as you walk by people talking, they're repeating it. And at the same time, you have to be, as we're talking today, you know, you have to be strong and go out there and experience the world, experience these things that are amazing. Our world stays amazing. The people in our world stay amazing. And we need to experience that. We need to trust our community. And best way to do it is to be part of it, and to know the signs, and to be willing to listen and observe, and to know when and where to talk about it.
yeah, reminds me of Mary Oliver's poem, Instructions for Living a Life. It's a short 3-line poem. And she writes, pay attention, be astonished, and tell about it.
I like that.
So you're using art, nature, kindness, breathing, these things, and you're coming back and also then having to operate functionally, raising a child, and handle those weird pieces of paper that come through the slot in the wall every day. And in this, you're choosing then to not just to kind of reinforce your position, but to go out into the world and share what you've experienced about your healing process with other people, and create the structures to help other people with their healing. You started a nonprofit organization to help survivors of traumatic brain injury be able to, and their caregivers. Could you tell us a little bit about your sort of thing, like how did that happen, and what do you think pulled you to be so kind of focused on on just sort of service to others in the world?
I didn't know any better.
Oh.
I think that my friend telling me that all the research I was doing wasn't helping me over lunch. You know, he was telling me this is crazy. He and Doris and Peter Drucker we would go to lunch, and they were just amazed at what I was doing. They were also opening doors to certain ones that they were aware of, but that were studying this neuroscience and stuff. And they were just, you know, as interested as I was in finding out what they'd been doing in between times, I was interested in telling them about what I was finding out. And they said, this is amazing. But you can't use this. And so somebody can, because if you've seen one brain injury, you've seen one brain injury. And so, you know, they're that distinct. And so they said, put it out there, and then you'll be able to have, you know, folks take advantage of some of this stuff. So Bridging the Gap, you know, got formed and got legal and became an official 501c3. And we could put all this stuff out there, and people can take advantage of these resources. So why not? And and we have, books that people have read on there. I have more to add to it because Christian Jimenez came to us about 4.5 years ago after a young man, raising a family, had a 7-year-old daughter in a marriage that fell apart because of his stroke. And now he is back to work, and he's also reading all the books and keeping on top of all of the studies that are done. And then he gives me a blurb about the book and everything, and we put it on our website. And his buddy that they met through Bridging the Gap, his name is Cisco, and he had a construction accident and has had 7 brain surgeries. And he is now helping in composting and community gardens. So feeding the homeless, as well as those that can afford to purchase vegetables in community gardens, and helping community gardens learn better ways of the water system, the irrigation system for some of them. And so these guys are just 2 of the examples of what's happening currently through some of the folks in our group. So no, it's not just come to group and realize you're not alone and feel better. It's a matter of learning different ways to be strong, go out in your community and give back, and find some ways of being able to pay the bills again and get back on top of leading a productive life and having purpose.
So people are coming in, getting support, and if I understood correctly, you're giving them the tools to go back out and be, as part of their own healing, to reconnect with the community, to be of service to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of turning in here, how can I embrace this larger community? You just got me again. The lessons here for not just recovering from incredible trauma, but for being alive and embracing, like we have this one opportunity to be alive, this one wild and precious life, right? And this is just so focused and deliberate about what is really important here. This is so much larger than recovering from injury. It's like the line from David Whyte poem, Sweet Darkness. He ends it by saying, anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. And you're choosing what is going to really bring you alive, but it's not as in like with this kind of a feeling, right? It's putting it out there and being of engaging with the world. For some reason, all these poems are bouncing in my brain right now. In Mary Oliver's poem, the journey, she realizes what she has to do to move forward in her life, and she says, she's stepping forward into the world, and not retreating from it. This is such powerful lessons for embracing your life and this life in a way that is, it's not selfishly clutching. It's putting it out on a platter with vulnerability, with service, with this is beautiful.
Well, and when you call it that clutching, we put together, several people have put it together. One of the things is for mental health purposes, what I can control and what I cannot, because we get in those loops about, thinking about, what's in my control and what is not. And so we have a circle of control, and where I actually, show them in kind of a circle, or show them in the form of a brain. I can't control what other people say. I can't control that person that gave me that funny look. And so I took it wrong. I thought they were saying something about me, but it was all in my head. So yeah, I mean, these are things that we have little 5-minute talks about. And then we get into our discussion where people will bring up things in our support groups. But to have a 5-minute topic that then may lead to more discussion, or they had something else that they wanted to talk about. So it is about what is going on. And when you mentioned that, because it was so, what you did was so physical about what I originally called myself was, I couldn't stay under the quilts. I had to go out in the community. I had to find out what was there. And it was almost as if I thought, well, maybe I could even go back to school and become a brain surgeon or a rocket scientist.
And you did go back to school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do encourage folks, parents come to me, and we have little groups about talking to the college students who are having a tough time. We had a young man, the mother came to me, and I said, I think that it's an eye and a vision situation with his brain injury, because he was mugged for his iPhone, and he ended up going to see our neuro optometrist. And when he came out of there with the glasses, he says, I wouldn't have gone to street drugs to try and fix this, and I wouldn't have had to go through the police arresting me for street drugs if I'd have gone this route. Mm. Because what people end up doing is trying to help themselves when the doctors don't do it and they've gone the wrong route. He was misdiagnosed as ADHD. And instead it was the brain was misinterpreting what the eye's information was. That's another talk for another day. But yeah, it's very common with brain injury to have the brain and eyes miss each other on what information is being handed over, because there's so much input from the eyes, and the eyes have stopped tracking together, which mine went through a couple of times. So, but there is vision therapy that can get them tracking together. And so if there's issues, just like we learned that the barometric pressure changes can cause you to think, oh my gosh, I must be sick. Oh my gosh, something's going on. And it's not. A barometric pressure, a weather change can cause the brain to have some, misses, some fogginess, some whatever. And you're not sick, and you're just let the weather change again. It'll be okay. But I've learned more than I ever wanted to learn, and I wish I could find somebody to give me a PhD in what I know.
So if people, sort of several thoughts in here. First of all, in a moment, folks, if there's anybody that has comments or thoughts and would like to get in on this conversation, we're going to open up this conversation to everybody who's currently on the call. This is an incredible opportunity to pick the brain of someone who has really made deliberate choices of what the fundamentals are. So if you've got, start thinking, if you'd like to be involved in this conversation, that opportunity will be yours in just a moment. I wanted to know, just kind of to circle back, we started with thinking about art and nature. There have been all these other elements in service and kindness and growth. But just to return for a moment to kind of the role of your thoughts about the role of nature in the process of healing, and the role of art in that. And just wondering if you could just perhaps say a little bit, I'd be really interested in your ideas about how that sort of crystallized for you.
Well, I feel that one of my first friends out was a gal who was working at the hospital, and she was Native American. She is Native American, and she pops back into my life, and she really taught me, I mean, their feelings about nature and their higher beings, thanking, the rock, thanking the deer, thanking everything in their life that is in nature and living in nature as they do, just taught me so much to be grateful for every day, for the sun coming up, for the moon at night, for the light from the stars and the moon. It just taught me so much that there wasn't anything that I was experiencing as I would go outside and sit and just listen, as I was describing before, the feel of these, the petals of the rose, you know, the sitting among my Mattia poppies and just feeling the presence of my friend who'd passed with the bench with his name on it, and knowing that that I was enriched by that friend, even though I couldn't pick up the phone and talk to him anymore. Okay, so
there's that connection.
Yeah, so nature brings me that connection to my friends who are gone. Nature brings me that essence of being that I had to give up to come back from the coma and the not having a memory of who I was prior to the accident. So that now I was back here. What I was going to do with that? What do you do? So just knowing that I had to do something. I was going to be back here. I was going to, do it well, because it is a gift, as you started out. Nature is that gift we have, and we need to acknowledge that and preserve it, be part of it. And if you go out and experience it, walk in it, touch it, you understand why. So to have the gift of being able to draw it and take it home with me, rather than, and I was taking pictures of it too, so I could take that home and draw it. but I do think that because man doesn't do something to make a tree, but to appreciate it. The wind you can't see, but you see what it does. It's, my gosh, I mean, it's phenomenal. And I just kept feeling like if the sun can come up, I know it's there, even if it's behind the clouds, I'll get up to it and do another day. I'll be here. I will be present. As much pain as I may have that day, I will still be here. And if somebody calls and wants to know, how can I get through this? The pain is so significant, Celeste. I'll tell them how.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to invite more members of our community who are online with us today to join in the conversation with Celeste. And you can do that by either the raise hand function on Zoom, or if you turn on your camera, you can raise your paw like that, and I'll see. Celeste, I'd like to introduce you to Chris Todd, who's a longtime member of our group in our community here. Chris, thank you so much for being with us, and you're live.
Hi, Celeste. Thank you so much. I had a stroke about 4 years ago, and I was not real positive at first. In fact, I was pretty angry. And when I finally realized or took inventory of what I could do and what I couldn't do, and that I could change it, that I could train myself to get everything back, or some things back, that's when it finally turned. That was, the moment of truth, sort of, where, I think I could be positive, honey, when I realized, I had could type but one hand was gibberish and this hand was made sense. And I worked really, really hard on the old, and now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their country. And finally, I got this hand to understand those letters again. And I said, wow, I can do this. But that alone time before I asked for help, got help, I was a monotone. I'm still working on that. My speaking voice isn't quite up to what it was, but my singing voice I've worked very, very hard on. And I found that people came out of the woodwork who had strokes when they found out that I had had a stroke, and they just said, well, so how do you do this? What do you do? I didn't form any great organizations, but I was really happy to get the chance to share with them what I had done and to learn from them what they had done. And I think that's really important. There was a silver lining. I discovered a lot of books I could read again a second time, and they were just as powerful. Films, same thing. I thought, well, I think I saw this before. I think I must have read this before, but they're just wonderful. The classics or, something that's new. I also found that because of COVID, when groups started meeting online, that was like a silver lining, with John Muir Lies. I think I had drawn before. In fact, I was an art teacher. He came to one of my classes and taught kids. And I know I did a lot of drawing before, but finding the reconnect with nature journaling made a big difference. And I think that the fact that nature journaling is just always there and you're pushing yourself and you're not competing with anyone, that was, as long as you could see improvement day to day. And I would say that's an important thing to share with people, is to find things that you know how to do that you miss or you knew how to do, but notice every day how it's a little bit better, and look for those growth areas, because that's what keeps me going, just little growth things. And I guess the other thing I want to share is an acupuncturist has been helping me for the last 3 years. And I'm very religious about going to that, because I think he said that if you go within 3 years, if you start, those nerve connections can be repaired. It's makes a difference. Anyway, I just thought I'd share those things because I think some of them could help people. But there were silver linings to it too.
Very good. Thanks so much. Yeah. I tried, hundreds and hundreds of therapies. Everybody had something different. And I tried so many of them, and I got down to 3 in it. And then, not too long ago, I was listening to a gal, very similar background to mine. She'd gone through some of the same things, and she was saying the same stuff I did. You try all these different things, but you try one thing at a time to make sure that you know what works. And it was just amazing, just amazing. So thanks so much for sharing. Thanks.
There was one other element too. I really worked hard to get off all medications, and as quickly as I could. That was a big goal of mine, and it made a big difference because I felt more aware, and really deal with things. And I had not taken anything before, and just didn't like the idea of having to rely on things, my system. And I became so grateful for just the day-to-day health. And I started to notice, I've been a teacher for years, and I'd never paid attention to myself. I just was always healthy, just go to work, do your thing, whatever. And that was a hard thing, to have to take myself seriously every day, to look inward and take inventory. And that was a big deal. And I don't feel that it was so much going inward and hiding things. It was freeing me up by making sure I was okay to, okay, I've got everything today that I had yesterday and a little bit better, in this area, so I can go out and do what I need to do now. Anyway, that's all I have to share.
Chris, thank you so much for sharing that with us today. And thank you for your really active participation in this community. We're really, really happy that you're part of us. Um, the I'm just going to throw in a small plug here. I'm going to drop into the chat. I think I copied it in the right way, but the link to, if you want to donate to Bridging the Gap to support the work that um, that Celeste is doing. I know that a lot of people at the end of the year would my parents, sort of part of our family tradition was at the end of every year we would sort of sit down with this sort of list of nonprofit organizations and projects and things that are important to us, and we would sort of make very specific targeted donations towards what was ever moving and important to us. And please consider bridging the gap this year if you have such a process, and if not, consider doing that. And if that doesn't work with your funding and finances at this time, I just want to remind people what Celeste said about the impact of an act of kindness. And maybe if you're inspired by what you're seeing today, and want to affect some of that change in your world and your life, starting with acts of kindness makes a big difference. It looks like the link I put up didn't work because I'm a tech noob. So maybe what we'll do is let's put up again the link that'll bring people to Bridging the Gap,
Yeah.
the webpage there, and then you won't have to go with my link. You can find it right there on the homepage.
Yeah, just it's on the homepage.
There we go. Thanks, Avea. Yeah, so I'm sorry for sending people to a dead link. The idea of kindness in what you're doing really speaks to me. You talk about sort of starting your meetings with people reflecting on acts of kindness and really bringing that up to really giving that the time, respect, and reverence in your process. That to me, it is the acts of kindness are on this sort of interesting. They're an interesting connection between gratitude on one hand and also empowerment on the other. Because these acts of kindness are they're deliberate acts, things that are being done to make this world a better place. And you're also trying to help people realize that, like, your work, you had to be really intentional about stepping out into this world again and and doing things. So that's, you're encouraging people to be, proactive in this life. And I really love the way that your focus on those acts of kindness makes a connection between gratitude and whether it's sort of proactive self-advocacy or sort of, engaging with the world. That's a very powerful thing to pay attention to.
Well, it sure is. And I think that act of kindness can be anything from seeing somebody homeless and getting them a meal to, our guys helping people find the resources to, continue on. And, taking people, like I say, taking people to the Botanic Garden is my favorite thing that have never experienced, that kind of thing, and, or, going on a walk kind of thing. But somebody's just asking if I don't mind sharing some more of my art. And I do like to find the flowers. And then we were talking about, I just had I wanted to use up some bright colors on my paint palette one day. And I decided that street dancers were important. And so I drew them in a little fair. So it was the clothing that I thought was kind of fun. And I started doing faces, but I decided I had to find a way to do eyes. So I practiced, and I do have pages and pages of just, maybe just eyes. But let's see. I mean, my poppies are those
Yes.
they're just so fantastic to and then this is a little friend of mine. But I do tend to have, and then I found this tree at the garden, and I don't think I did it justice, but it was, I like the shape. I like being able to see through some of the branches. Let's see. And I found, let's see, I'm looking for a certain thing. And of course, when you're looking for something, it doesn't show up. I had found poppies and just decided I was just going to do pages and pages of poppies. And I did some that looked very realistic, to the point where my friend said, "Oh my gosh, can I have that?" And so I gave it away to, and it's now in London in a person's,
Oh.
yeah, it's in her. And then I did just, where you have to do the crazy ones because you have a bunch of really bright colors.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it resembles and what was it? Oh, I was with a friend. She was my friend's grandmother, Gigi, everybody called her. And I was sitting in her apartment in New York, right on one of those main streets. And she even had Picasso on her leggings. And so she looked in the cabinet next to her and she said, "Can you point to the pot that Picasso did and the one that my 5-year-old granddaughter did?" I wouldn't know the difference, and I don't want to embarrass anybody. But I probably was making her granddaughter really happy. So I mean, to me, it's just, well, here's a real important one with noses.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's a matter of, you have to do what comes to you to do. And so practicing these things, and I mean, I have a lot of these hairless, just kind of, the features. And I thought, well, there's that too. And I found that sometimes I felt like what I was doing was kind of, here's a New York City scene, some urban sketching.
That's really fun.
So I consider myself sometimes feeling like you have to do something like you're a 5-year-old again. But I think that that's the fun in it, because I show people that when they tell me I couldn't possibly, I'm nowhere near an artist, right? So if you're nowhere near an artist and you feel like you have to do something, then you show them where you get back to doing things in crayons, and that's perfectly okay. And then the other ones where my friend, took it out of my hands and said, I'm framing this, it's California poppies, and it's going to my friend right away. So, so you get paid for some art and you go, oh, whoa, okay, well, that made me an artist maybe that day. No, but I think that it's something that, so, and I've done this little ballerina. Oops, there she is. So there's some things that are just
so lively. That motion is great. Oh, hold that up, a little ballerina friend up again.
So I think
a little bit higher.
Yeah, it is. Oh, yes.
So I think I think it's motion, and I think it's when you can catch something that makes people. Well, here's a cat and a hummingbird.
Mm.
Yeah.
So it really runs the gamut. I mean, I love working in, that's all ballpoint pen. I got carried away with my ballpoint pens, and so it was, I don't know who was I don't remember. Anyway, so I think that you have to give it a try. And I did an owl that looked like in Robin Hood, there's a Friar Tuck. I did an owl that turned out looking like Friar Tuck. You know, these things happen. But I think the fun thing is to just keep trying. Here's another one of my street dancers.
Those are really fun.
The textile.
So yeah, I think that it's and then the pot with the flowers in it behind me was done by a friend of mine, Bob Smith, and he gave me flowers one time, and I said, achoo, 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 I can't have flowers in my tiny apartment, it's too much. And he said, okay, well, I'll give you flowers another way. So that's in acrylics that he painted in. He's passed now, but he always had an answer for everything. And the answer to I can't have fresh flowers in a tiny apartment was to go ahead and paint in his acrylics for me. So you know, I mean, it's just
That's really sweet.
It's a lovely experience being part of this life and knowing some really amazing people. Not to mean that I haven't met some really charmers. I mean, some people that just they're negative because they're negative. And I chose not to stay under the quilts. I chose to find those, to deal with the situations that are negative and realize that there are good people to be around.
And we can all make the same choice if we choose to. But it's not easy. It takes work, because especially if we have habits and routines that where we kind of, or we feel, you know, the vulnerability of coming out from under the quilts is that is really scary, and it's hard to do. But if you try it and you fail, it's okay just to try it again and to try it again. And I think art is another great example of that, that it's okay to try it again and to try it again and to try it again. And instead of kind of, I'm going to arrive at the masterpiece of art or of self-actualization, no, we just keep trying. Yeah.
So
And
sometimes you just have to do half a face. So I don't know. I like I say, I just have more fun trying things out. I think, and this, some of this stuff, you know, I found a picture because I went to New York and I went to all these beautiful museums. And so I'd say, okay, well, I've got to try that one. I've got to try that one. And I'm not trying to be these, you know, famous artists and things. It's just that, well, if they tried that, and then I started finding out about how they would go and they would, you know, hang out together and they would paint these things. And I thought, well, I wonder if I tried that. I wonder if I tried that canal with the boat over there and how the wall comes up and it goes over there and there's people on the sidewalks and on the bricks or on the, well, it looks like cement steps. I don't know what it is. But it was like, oh, these scenes are so cool. And they would travel and hang out and do these things. And they were trying to be these really great artists. And they didn't know if they were going to be or not. They were just studying each other, I guess. And so I just found it was kind of fascinating to get some of this backstory of what was going on. And we've got them hung in the Louvre and all these, and the places here. And I was looking at them in person and going, oh, and at one place, I wasn't even thinking, and I reached out to point to something and the guard is there and he's going, ah. So you can't, in a museum, you can't even reach out towards the table.
They don't know, if you want to point, I try to teach my girls to point in museums by kind of going like that little part over there instead of doing that.
Yeah, they didn't like it at all. So I learned my lesson. Yeah. I said, it's okay, I got a broken brain.
But you know, the impressionists, they also made a community that supported the growth of that movement, just as you are creating a movement, a community that supports the growth of this movement.
I think if we just take the patience, have patience. One of the things that's on our t-shirts is believe, be patient, and never give up.
Believe, be patient, never give up. I'd love to bring Avea Moore, our co-host, in on the call. I saw you had your hand up a little while ago. Um, and the um, Avea, thank you for your support and thank you for being with us.
Thank you for letting us be here to listen to your journey and to the brain that you chose to create. The way that you chose very intentionally the things that you were going to value and search for and cultivate in life is so beautiful and so inspiring. Very humbled to be with you.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure, and just it's wonderful to be with you guys. Did you have a question?
Sort of. It was more an idea that I'd had because you both were talking about kindness, and it was an idea that I was going to ask if people wanted to put into the chat as just kind of a way to internalize that, and also as almost like a meditation. And the idea I was going to suggest was if people wanted to put into the chat first an act of kindness that they have done in the past week, and then secondly, an act of kindness that they've received. Just as a thought.
Perhaps as a way of closing out this discussion, because I know a number of educators here, we've got sort of sort of a short time limit. But that might be a really beautiful way to kind of round out our discussion. So Avea's invited us to drop into the chat something that you did and something that you received as an act of kindness recently. Let's all just take a moment and do that. So as people are writing some of those thoughts into the chat, just want to also invite people to think about today's conversation and what in it is for you. What are your real most important take-homes? So if you've been taking doodle notes, sketch notes, or other notes, kind of look down at those and draw a happy face or a smile next to some of those points. If you want to, you can share them in the chat as well. But think to yourself and really articulate something specific that you, again, our brains will tend to do tomorrow whatever it is that we did today, and it often takes work and intentionality to get them to do things in a different way. So think to yourself if there's something that inspires you about how the possibility of doing something in a different way, what that might be for you, or if there's a critical idea that you really want to carry with you in your pocket. Then to just articulate that for yourself right now, perhaps even write it down on a little piece of paper, fold that up and stick it in your pocket. You'll find it when you're looking for loose change in a day or two from now. You'll pull that out and it will remind you of that. Celeste, I had I had no idea what we're getting into when I invited you to talk to this group. I had a pretty strong impression that it would be really good, but what you gave us today was so much richer, so deep and beautiful. I am moved, I am inspired, and um, and grateful. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
I am so grateful to have been here, so grateful to be part of this now, and just to call you all friend. And please, anybody who wants to reach out, my contact information is on the website, and it's available. And just in the subject line, please say where we met. And I would say that I have a few memory problems. So it's always best to put in the subject line how we met and go from there. But it is definitely look forward to hearing from you if you're so inclined. And this has been very special. I have to say, I never know how it's going to go. I was asked to do a TED Talk. And when they told me I had to talk from a prepared speech, a written speech, and to know every word and every period, comma, and everything, and I cannot do that. So you won't see a TED Talk from me until they loosen those requirements. I speak from my heart and sometimes my head, but mostly from what the conversation leads us to. And it's always interesting to me too.
Yeah, this absolutely beautiful. This will put this recording up and it'll be available for other people to review. If you were inspired today, please share that recording with your friends. And also, I want to encourage everybody to take a look at that Bridging the Gap website. Avea just put the link to that up again.
Yeah, that is tbibridge.org. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Avea, your closing thought for us?
Last thought. And I will also make sure that I put that link as well in the show notes as part of the recording. But one last thing, could I please invite folks to go to the gallery view for a second? And can we do something that I really want us to do more often? Can everybody put up their hands and gently shake them side to side and applaud Jack? Because Jack is being just an amazing guide and an amazing host for the past more than a year, a lot more than a year for a lot of us, years and years, but especially thanks to Jack for the past year of kindness and of being a role model of that kindness and of being the kindness he wishes to see in the community. So let's applaud Jack, or you can do the heart, whatever you prefer. But we love you, Jack.
Oh, well, thank you. Dear friends, y'all got me through this year as well. I'm just honored to be here in this growing community, and Celeste, we are honored to have you as part of our community. Thank you so much for being here. Avea, you have been my absolute rock through this process, and you facilitated a whole bunch of other wonderful stuff. Just so grateful to all the people who are stepping as Celeste was talking about, kind of, and you can retreat from the world, you can also step forward and embrace and kind of share what you can. I see Kate, who's developing programs for youth. I see Marley on the call, who's developing all sorts of resources for Spanish language nature journaling, as well as Central and South America. I see Rebecca, who's taught us to handle our words with so much more intention. I see Rosa, who's helped us think about kind of the accessibility in nature journaling and how to kind of expand the community that can benefit from this. Um, so many wonderful teachers, Marcia, Laura, thank you deeply for the generosity and the time that you give. Um, for me, at the end of the year is a really wonderful time to as Celeste was talking about, gratitude, to really be aware of the people, the choices that have opened up your world. And I'm to all of you, I'm just so grateful. Thank you. And we will all see you again soon.
Thank you, Jack.
So be kind, be intentional. We can make, just as Celeste has talked, I think I wrote down, Avea said she was celebrating in Celeste the brain that you chose to create. And so I guess I'd like to leave everybody just with the thought of, think about the brain that you have. And is that the brain that you would choose? And if not, what are you going to do differently to start to weave those webs of neural connections that make that happen? Everything from, from drawing to gratitude to kindness, all of these are things that we can practice and we can get better at if we choose to do that. I'm feeling so inspired after listening to you, Celeste. It's wonderful. Thank you so much for your gift of your time, and thank you all.
Thank you for inviting me. Loved it.